The ivory chess piece hovered between Louisa's fingers, a queen poised above the checkered board like a blade suspended by a single, fraying thread. Across the table, the Duke of Gravenmore, Julian Vane, leaned back with the lazy, irritating confidence of a man who had never lost a thing that mattered in his entire life. The private club's wood-paneled walls seemed to breathe with the scent of expensive cigar smoke and masculine certainty. Louisa was the only woman allowed in this sanctum of privilege, a ghost in a room full of giants, and she felt the weight of every pair of eyes in the room. "Checkmate in 4 moves," Julian said, his voice a low, melodic rasp that carried just far enough for the surrounding men to hear. "Unless, of course, you'd like to concede now, Miss Marsh, and save yourself the public embarrassment." Louisa's jaw tightened. The name Eliza Marsh was a lie that tasted like copper in her mouth. In reality, she was Louisa Whitmore, the daughter of a woman whose reputation had been shredded by the very men in this room. She was here under a false identity, carving out a space for herself in the only way she knew how, through the cold, logical violence of a chessboard. "I don't concede," she said, her voice a steady anchor in the sea of mocking whispers. She placed her queen with deliberate, bone-chilling precision. Julian's dark eyes flickered. For a moment, the mask of the bored aristocrat slipped, revealing a flash of genuine interest. He moved his knight, cutting off her escape route. "Stubborn," he murmured. "I admire that, though I wonder if you realize the gravity of the position you've put yourself in." It was then that the Duke, fueled by the wine and the adrenaline of the crowd, made the mistake that would change both of their lives forever. He leaned forward, his face inches from hers, a predatory smile playing on his lips. "You play with such fire for a mere governess's daughter. Tell me, what would it take to truly break that resolve? I'll tell you what, if you win this match, I'll marry you." The room went deathly silent. It was a mockery, a cruel jest meant to remind her of the vast chasm between their social standings. A duke did not marry a woman like Eliza Marsh. He was dangling a crown in front of her just to watch her reach for it and fail. "Is that a formal offer, Your Grace?" Louisa asked, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Julian laughed, a rich, dark sound. "Before all these witnesses?" "Certainly. If you can beat me, I shall make you the Duchess of Gravenmore. But if you lose—" He let the sentence hang in the air, his eyes tracing the line of her throat. "If you lose, you leave London tomorrow and never darken the doors of this club again." "Accepted," Louisa whispered. The match that followed was not merely a game, it was a war. For hours, the only sounds were the ticking of the clock and the sharp click of ivory against wood. Louisa played with a desperation born of years of hiding, years of being told she was nothing. She saw the board not as a game, but as a map of her own survival. Julian, initially amused, began to realize too late that he had walked into a trap. He had underestimated the governess's daughter. He had seen a girl, but he was playing against a strategist who had been forged in the fires of social ruin. When Louisa finally moved her bishop into the final, killing position, the Duke froze. He stared at the board, his breath hitching. The silence in the club was so heavy it felt as if the walls might buckle. "Checkmate," Louisa said, her voice clear and cold. The scandal hit London like a lightning strike. The Duke of Gravenmore, the most eligible and arrogant bachelor in the ton, had been defeated at chess by a commoner, and he had given his word to marry her. Most men would have found a way out, a legal loophole or a quiet payoff, but Julian Vane, for all his faults, was a man who considered his word a sacred contract. The wedding was a somber, hurried affair. There were no flowers, no cheering crowds, only the cold stone of a chapel and the bitter realization that they were now bound together by a mocking wager. On their wedding night, Julian stood by the window of his ancestral home, looking out at the sprawling estate that now belonged to a woman he barely knew. "You have your title, Louisa," he said, using her real name for the first time. "You have your security. But do not mistake this for a marriage. You won a match, nothing more. We shall live our lives in separate wings of this house. I will provide for you, but I will not be a husband to you." Louisa stood her ground, her silk dress rustling in the draughty room. "I didn't play for your heart, Julian. I played for my freedom. If you wish to live in silence, that is your choice. But I am the Duchess of Gravenmore now, and I do not intend to spend my life hiding in the shadows of your pride." The months that followed were a test of wills. Julian retreated into his work and his silence, treating Louisa as a ghost in his corridors. But Louisa was not a woman who could be easily ignored. She began to use her new position to influence the world around her. She opened chess clinics for the poor, she funded schools for girls, and she navigated the treacherous waters of the Tun with a grace that left her critics speechless. She was no longer the girl with the false name, she was a force of nature. And slowly, the Duke began to notice. He would find himself watching her from the balcony as she taught the local children the nuances of the Sicilian defense. He would see her at dinner, her mind clearly working through complex social problems while he sat brooding over his wine. He realized that she was the only person in his life who didn't fear him, the only one who didn't want anything from him but the truth. The turning point came during the Great Winter Gala. A rival, Lord Stirling, who had long sought to humiliate Julian, challenged the Duchess to a public match. He intended to prove that her win over Julian had been a fluke, a trick of the light. If the Duchess is truly as skilled as they say, Stirling sneered in front of the assembled nobility, surely she won't mind proving it tonight. Or perhaps the Duke simply let her win out of some misplaced sense of charity. Julian felt a surge of protectiveness he didn't know he possessed. He stepped forward to intervene, but Louisa placed a hand on his arm. Her touch was warm, steady, and for the first time, Julian didn't pull away. "I would be delighted to play you, Lord Stirling," Louisa said. "But let us make the stakes interesting. If I win, you will double your contribution to the London orphanage. And if I lose, well, I haven't lost a match in 3 years. I don't intend to start tonight." Julian sat in the front row, his eyes fixed on Louisa. He watched as she dismantled Stirling's defense with a cold, surgical efficiency. He saw the fire in her eyes, the brilliance of her mind, and he realized with a crushing weight that he had been the one who was blind. He had mocked her for wanting a title, but he was the one who was unworthy of her. When Louisa won, the room erupted in applause. Stirling slunk away in disgrace, but Louisa didn't look at the crowd. She looked at Julian. That night, in the quiet of the library, Julian finally broke the silence. He didn't stand by the window, he stood before her. "I thought I was the one holding all the pieces," he whispered. "I thought the world was a board I could control. But you are the only real thing I have ever known." He reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek. "I mocked you once by offering a marriage I didn't intend to honor. Tonight, I am asking you for a real one. Not because of a wager, and not because of a match. But because I am utterly lost without my queen." Louisa looked at the man who had once been her jailer and saw the partner he had become. She saw that the unthinkable wasn't that she had won a chess match, it was that she had won the heart of a man who thought he had none. "The match is over, Julian," she said, leaning into his touch. "We've both won." The Duke and Duchess of Gravenmore became the most formidable couple in England. They played their lives not as opponents, but as partners, proving that the most powerful move on any board is the one made in the name of love. The club that once barred women was eventually renamed in her honor, and the story of the governess who beat the Duke became a legend told to every girl who dared to pick up a chess piece and dream of a world where she was the one in control. The end of the game was only the beginning of their life. Together, they rebuilt the estate, reformed the laws of their lands, and raised children who were taught that intelligence was the greatest crown one could wear. And every year, on their anniversary, they would sit across from the same mahogany board. The Duke would lean forward with a smile, and he would say the words that started it all, "Your move, my Duchess."